Steve Fever YouTube channel. I'm going to talk a little bit about prep for rookie drafts. I'm going to do something a little differently than maybe what you're used to, especially what you're used to maybe hearing on the episodes and things like that. Although we did sort of reference something like this on our latest episode. So before I go through this, I just want to tell you that there's folks who can do a lot more with spreadsheets. I'm not a spreadsheet ninja. There are people who can do a lot more with numbers and formulas and things like that. And there are certainly people who can do a lot more with sort of formatting the spreadsheet and what you can do to like make it look a certain way and combine cells and columns and all that stuff. Like, I don't know, just I'm not very good with it. It's pretty basic. But so what you have up here is my never-ending rookie spreadsheet, and as basic as it is, it's something that I wanted to show you because it may be sort of a digestible, accessible way to maybe, I don't know, put on some training wheels and work towards what those other spreadsheet ninjas are doing. Because the more you get into Dynasty and the more you're a portfolio player and the more you're having to monitor a lot of leagues and that sort of thing, it just becomes a lot to manage. And so I've found stuff like this very helpful. So this is the never-ending Uber rookie spreadsheet. I started this around, I don't know, Christmas, New Year, something like that. Just kind of walk you through it. At the bottom here is, of course, the names of. So for each position, I had sort of my initial spreadsheet, right, with just some ranks and data and analytics and numbers that I pulled from people, some notes on each player, and did that, of course, for all the right. And then what I did was I came up with positional tiers, right? So this is one of the first kind of like quote unquote outputs I did with it. These are sort of the pre-draft positional tiers, and then I translated that into overall tiers, and that's kind of what you saw on the GoingFor2.com Superflex rookie rankings that I have up, right? So those are sort of like the pre-draft overall tiers. Then what I did is I made a TLDR page for every position. I'll pull up the running back one for you. So this just kind of took it down to their vitals, combine, RAS, my final pre-draft ranking, notes on them pre-draft. So for example, I don't know, Tyon Evans, big back and could surprise, draft capital lending spot, but will be determinative no matter what. He wound up a UDFA, and then my notes are, could be worse for UDFA, similar to Zach Evans, breaking into the backfield, likely post-rookie draft waivers, and then, of course, the final ranking of initial post-draft ranking of each guy. And then so I did that for all four positions, and then repeated the process of positional tiers for post-draft, right? So these are what the tiers came up looking like post-draft, right? But what I really want to get into is then taking those and doing this page here, which is sort of my overall tiers here in the first column. And then kind of as we move across, it's going to be like what I'm doing with them, right? So on the left-hand side here, all the way in column A, this is not the order in which I take them in a rookie draft. It's simply the order in which I like the players. It's not completely in a vacuum, right? Because I do take into account, positional value or, sort of where I'm going to have to take a player or something like that. I can't 100% filter out those kinds of biases, right? And be like, for me at least, completely, just straight up, how do I like the player? But it's as close to that as it gets, right? So what I've done then is compared it to the market, right? So how do I do that? Again, this is not the order in which I would draft them, but then in this column here, I start to arrange the picks based on a 12-team league in order, right? Because it's going to help me think about tiers, ranges, right, where guys are going, right? And then what I did was in column D here, I kind of said, what's the market, right? What's the community telling me? What's the vibe in the streets, right? Who's going where? And I use a couple different sources for that, ADP data from a couple sites and just kind of rookie drafts that I've been in, things that I'm seeing out in the streets, and just kind of roughly came up with, although I guess that's not rough, who's going at which pick based on a Superflex rookie draft with a 1.5 tight end premium, right? So as I'm comparing how I feel about a player to what's going on in the market, right? I start to come up with, okay, what do I want to do with the player, right? But let me just first talk about column B here for a second, right? So in column B, I kind of have this nugget here from pick 108 to 112. And I see kind of two options with these picks. One is to trade not out or back, but across. This is where I would start trying to acquire 24 first, because I think that's just kind of the smart play. I think that's the, whatever you want to call it, plus EV. I think that's the, maintain the buying power play. I think also it starts in this range because this is where I start to sort of see a flattening or a low value tier of players, for example, with, maybe an exception or two. And by that, I mean simply the capital that you're asked to spend on the type of prospect you're getting, especially relative to some of the other ones that are available later at lower prices, et cetera, et cetera. So that, I think, becomes a move, right? There's always a point, I think, in our first rounds of rookie drafts where we're saying, "Oh, okay, I don't know. I feel better taking this guy later," or I wish I could just fast forward and get the guy that's at the mid-second anyway. So, and that's where you have to start saying, what do I do? Maybe I trade across for 24 first. The other thing I'm advocating people do this year is trading up into the top 6 picks. Now, trading up isn't exactly something that a lot of us like to do. There's, it's sort of the trend or whatever to trade back, acquire capital, right? That sort of thing, and then make targeted trade ups when necessary, and obviously those are the top 6 coveted picks, right? So why would you want to trade into something that's valued so highly? Isn't the price going to be high? Yes, but here's the thing. One, I've been hearing people talk about how hard it is to trade back this year. Because there's just such, what I think is unwarranted doom and gloom surrounding the class, right? So nobody wants to trade up. Nobody wants to trade up. Okay. All right. Well, then I do, right? Because then that tells me then the price is probably cheaper than it usually is to trade up. The other thing to think about is think about trading from, say, the 110 to the 105, right? From Dalton Kincaid to Jahmyr Gibbs, outside of the context of being in the rookie draft as it's going on. Like, what would it take after the rookie draft, right? What would it take generally in season? Or, what would it take in a startup, which is sort of the other thing that's going on this offseason and one of the other barometers we have for ADP and player value and that sort of thing. So, Dalton Kincaid, as much as I love the guy, he's going a little earlier than I thought he would in startups, like 7th, 8th round, like top 10 tight end already. And that may be the case, but Jahmyr Gibbs is going in like the mid-3rd in startups, maybe even before that, as a top like 5 to 7 running back. So ask yourself, you're in a startup, right? What's it going to take to get from 710 to 307, right? What's it going to take to jump 4 rounds in a high-value area of the draft? What's it going to take to get from ostensibly the dynasty tight end 7, 8, 9 to the dynasty RB 5, 6, 7, right? Okay. Think about what that price would be, right? I would venture to guess. In fact, I don't want to say guarantee, but I feel very confident that price would be higher than what it's going to take to get from 110 to 105 in the context of the rookie draft. So like, you know how we say, oh, quarterbacks are never cheaper than a rookie draft. You know, this is one of those cases where, if you're going to trade up, this is the time to do it, right? Because it's cheaper to do it now than it will be later. So, trade up into those top 6 picks. Those are the ones that we feel the most confident about. Those are the ones that are highly coveted. Maybe Kincaid's a bad example because I'm going to talk later about how I love him and I want to be overweight on him. But you get the idea. Call it Zay Flowers, right? Whatever you want to do. That's kind of the principle behind that. So that's what I'm saying in this column here. Maybe be aggressive and trade up, right? Because it may never be cheaper to grab, a Gibbs, a JSN, a Stroud, relative to the position that you're in and the player you could get there. Okay, so what I've done then is I've compared how I order them to how the market is ordering them, and then roughly saying sort of how that falls in the form of, rookie draft, right? Okay. Then sort of I said, okay, this is kind of like the tiers of the market, right? What's out there in the world, right? And I did that for up to, the end of the 5th round, right? Okay. And then I did what I called meta tiers, right? So this meta tier is kind of like, all right, take it one step further out, right? Bigger tiers, right? So there's the Bijan tier, there's the up to 106 tier, and then there's tiers after that. I have a little bit of overlap with 107 because it's not those top 6 picks that we covered and we're confident about, but it's much more often than not going to be the Jordan Addison pick, right? And so in some ways the Wild Wild West doesn't really start until 108, after the 107. That's a little less certain than, say, JSN being 106, right? Like some people are taking QJ 107. If you're in a 1.75 or higher tight end premium, you might get aggressive and take Kincaid 107, etc. Right? So there's a slight little overlap there, but generally that's the tier. And then, as you notice, the tiers get bigger, and then I can just kind of, I don't go all the way down into like the, 4th round picks and things like that. And then there's just another big meta tier of, I think you can probably feel pretty confident, not just in what you're getting in the first 10-ish picks, at least relative to what you're getting in the rest of the draft, but also fairly confident, if not in the order, in that that's going to be the 10 guys. And then I think it starts to open up after that. And again, just, stopping here, like mid-third, right? Okay. So then I said to myself, here's what I think. Here's what the market thinks. Am I above, below, or even with the market, right? And then that's just simply putting in the word above, below, or even. And then what's the difference, right? Again, this is rough, right? Like ADP is going to change over the next, week, and maybe I'll go in and update the market column and then update, the above, even, below, and right. But in general, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get a sense of like, what do I think? What does the market think? And what is the difference, right? So in this column, it's like the number of spots difference, right? So for example, a positive 15, I like Marvin Mims 15 spots ahead of where the market likes him, right? So I'm above market on him by a lot, right? Whereas down here with Will Levis, right, I'm 10 below the market, right? Just to get a sense of where am I at, comparatively speaking to the market. So then I ask myself in column L here, do I want my exposure to match that difference, right? So just because I don't like a player as much, or just because I like a player more, doesn't mean I want my exposure to reflect that gap, right? Because I think it's important, if you play in a number of leagues like I do, that you diversify the portfolio a bit, right? So let's start here, right? I'm with Anthony Richardson, right? I'm even with the market, right? But I don't want my exposure to match that, right? I really like leaning into Richardson ceiling and upside. So I put no plus. Means no, I don't want my exposure to match it. I want more than that exposure, right? Let's do Marvin Mims, right? Okay. I'm 15 above. Do I want my exposure to match that? No, 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 no. That would be leaning into Mims a little too heavily, so I say no minus, right? Like I want it to be less than that. And so there's sort of like, there's all different sorts of combos, right? Like, I could be minus on a player and want even less of that player because I completely think they're putrid, right? And that sort of thing. I could be plus on a player and I could want even more, right? I could be even and want less, even and want more. You get the point, right? And so, I don't have like an exact number on exposure, right? Like for me, I'm still kind of feeling this out. It's still a little more vibesy, right? Like, I guess what I could do is like count my leagues, right? And then figure out like what percentage of the league do I want to have that player in, or like what percentage of those leagues is, do I have a good chance of getting that player based on the existing capital I have now and the trade activity in the league, et cetera, et cetera. And then maybe come up with like an exact number of like, I want to shoot for X number of shares of that player. If that's in your wheelhouse, if that's something you want to spend time doing, obviously do it, right? Okay. So then I just, so I've asked myself, what do I think? What does the market think? What's the conclusion, above, below, or even? What's the difference? And do I want my exposure to match that difference? And then I have notes, right? So let's see. For Charbonnet, right? I'm only slightly below the market. 112 wouldn't be terrible. I'd prefer the early second. If A-Chain is available, considering trading back to a truther, right? So like, I'm not going to have zero A-Chain, but I know there's somebody who would take him at 112 or 201 with more enthusiasm than I would. And so maybe if I have that pick and A-Chain still on the board, trade it to somebody who likes A-Chain, and then take Charb a couple picks later, right? So that would be sort of like my note. And then simply in column O here, I'm just tallying the number of shares I have, right? And kind of monitoring, like, do I think I am in the ballpark of what I said I wanted to do here with my exposure, and do I want it to match how I feel about the player, right? So I got a lot of Bijan, apparently, right? I'm even with the market. I'm okay with my exposure matching that, being even, not being overweight or underweight, right? It's just kind of like, it's kind of a bad example because it's like Bijan. You want all the Bijan you can get, right? Which is what the market says. But I got 4 shares, right? So, the rookie draft that starts up tomorrow, first of all, I've been trying to trade 101s a lot, right? So, but the rookie draft that starts up tomorrow, and I've got the 101. I really want to make the effort to maybe trade in that one because I've already got my 4 Bijan shares, right? Or let's see here, Josh Downs, right? I am one above the market. I'd like to be a little heavier than that, a little more overweight on that, but I only have the 1 share now, right? So maybe he's a guy to target in the second round in tomorrow's rookie draft, right? Next week's rookie draft, whatever. And what I'm going to do after this is all over is I'm going to kind of do a debrief in one of these columns and kind of say, how did this all work out, right? How many did I end up with? What did I see out there in the streets? Why was it harder or easier to get a certain player? Why was it harder or easier to trade up in a certain league? And just kind of, get the notes in there. And then, when we have a chance to breathe a little bit more in the dead zone in June, kind of go back and take a look at it, right? And just like anything else, say, okay, when next year rolls around, when the NFL draft rolls around and the whole rookie season rolls around, right? What did I learn from this mega uber rookie spreadsheet process, and how can I do better next year? right? And so, I don't want to say that's what it's all about. It's about being better. It's a little like motivational coachy kind of talk. But hey, like who doesn't want to win more, and who doesn't, want to have money and from the winnings and all that jazz. So, that'll be it for this video. Please make sure that you subscribe to the channel, like the video, throw us a comment. You can episodes drop of Dynasty Fever audio every Thursday, available pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. That's a wrap. Thanks for watching.